This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
I'd like to call the Board of Ed workshop to order at 6:10. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So this is workshop number 3, and tonight we're going to spend our time talking about special education and facilities and maintenance. And so I think we will start with facilities and maintenance.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Can I say something before folks start, just about the package that we sent out?
Sure.
So I sent out an updated budget to include the girls' ice hockey. We put it in one line item in the professional tech service line item because we didn't have a real breakdown of where the transportation and where the other costs were going to be. So for simplicity's sake at this point, I put it in that one particular line item. We based it on the current 7 girls that are in there plus the 3 that didn't participate this year because of the cost in there. So we did 10 girls at an estimated cost of $1,600.
Do you have a copy? Because I did not.
Absolutely.
Did you send it to the town address or to the address that Joyce?
You know what, Wes, I truly don't remember which one I sent it to, but I made extra copies.
I got one.
Absolutely.
I didn't get one.
Sure.
Got needs one.
Yep.
Did you receive it, Dot? Just.
I received it, I just didn't have to.
Yeah, you did for 10?
Jen, do you need one?
I'm all set, thank you.
10 girls.
Okay.
Do you want
I thought you said you did 17.
Yeah, I have 2.
For a team, we're not doing a full team.
Thank you.
We were just anticipating on the current 7 girls that are participating, plus the 3 that didn't participate due to the cost.
Because they would still participate with the other towns.
Right. Correct. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that's why it went from a 3.99% to a 4.02%. But nothing else has changed within the budget. Okay, sorry, thank you.
So, Mr. Diana, why don't you highlight for us the big changes in your budget this year?
Well, there's only one big change. Again, I'd like to say that for the past, I believe, 5 years, we've held pretty much the line on all our costs. We've done quite a bit of work, actually, in the past 5 years in maintenance and repair in the schools with what we've had by shifting money from different areas. This year, the only increase that I see is the increase to do the maintenance on the new fields that we have. That's an additional $10,000. That is, it might not be 10, it might be a little less. It all depends on how much use the fields get.
You mean the contract with Spinnaker?
Contract,
So
correct.
you're not talking about fields where we're maintaining, you're
Talking about just
Right.
the
I
new
just want that cleared up.
turf fields for Sprint Turf contract.
Spin turf.
And 10,000, I'm hoping we only need them 4 times a year. It could come down to only 8,000. Again, it depends on how much use the fields get. Will depend on how much maintenance we need to do to them. But for the most part, our budget has stayed pretty much the same. I do have some, I don't want to say fears, but some costs that are going to be coming with the new middle school once the warranties are off the school. With the electronics, there is a lot of control work in that school, not just for HVAC, but for lighting systems, sound systems. There's stuff that we're going to need to look at next year to ensure that we keep these running correctly. I'm in the process right now of talking to vendors and getting costs so that our next budget, we can look at and have a good idea of where we're going to be at. I mean, a lot of these things are going to have to be bid out because of the cost of the maintenance.
Phil, can I ask you, you mentioned electrical. So is our electrician able to do some of that, the district electrician?
Our district electrician will be able to do some of it. Just for instance, the light switches when you go into a room. The light switch is not done or not run by AC power as we know it today. It's run by low voltage, There's, instead of 2 wires going to a switch, there's like 8 wires going to a switch. When you need to program this switch, you need a special tool, and it basically shoots a laser at it, and you program the switch to do what you want it to do. The lights in the school, if you're in a room and you're by a window, the first 18 feet of the lights are adjusted by how much light is being taken in from the actual window itself. So these are things that all need to be
If you do
controlled.
it wrong, do you end up in another dimension or something?
Yes, you actually end up on Star Trek. Unfortunately, these are all mandates given to us during the building by the state to meet all the new codes and laws and efficiencies. But that's, pretty much where we're at.
So you said one thing to me, that our warranties are out after 1 year? I'm just concerned
Labor
about
warranties
labor warranty.
are out after 1 year. The warranties on equipment range from 20 years to 5 years to 10 years, it all depends on what type of equipment we're talking about. But the labor warranties from contractors run out in 1 year. The building was built in 3 sections. So the first section that was built and approved approved by us and taken in by us, some of those warranties for labor are already done. So the wing of the classrooms, most of the contracts for the labor warranties are done, although the equipment is still under warranty.
And that's because they were built a year ago?
Correct, more than a year ago.
Okay.
And we're dealing with some of those issues right now, which, it's, for the most part, everything is fine. I mean, the building is good, the equipment, it's.
Yeah, because, our understanding was, with this new building, many of our costs were going to be reduced.
Well, our electrical costs are probably reduced, our gas consumptions are reduced. However, our maintenance, if we don't do it correctly to begin with, will cost us more money in the long run.
Okay.
So it's, to have a good and efficient maintenance program on this building is really important. Because when you start losing components of this building, it starts to become very expensive. Because basically, it's all controls and electronics based.
And our staff, custodial and maintenance staff, has had some professional development on some of it,
We've
correct?
had training on almost all the equipment. We can only do so much.
Yeah.
We have an electrician on staff, we have a plumber on staff, and we have a maintenance person on staff. We do not have an HVAC person on staff. My personal opinion is an HVAC professional on staff would save us a ton of money. Just for a call-out to tell us what's wrong with something costs us $200 to $300. Just to find out what's wrong with it, not to repair it, to find out what's wrong with it. So, going forward, an electrician is important to have. We've changed out all our equipment in our building, so we have LED lighting. We're doing a lot less changing of light bulbs and so forth, which is the day-to-day work. But going forward, someone that knows the control work for the HVAC systems, because all our schools presently have the same control systems. We've upgraded those over the past couple of years, so we can, go ahead. Yes.
Sorry, a lot of questions.
Go, Anita.
How much have we spent, and it may be in here, have we spent on HVAC?
HVAC? I don't have a dollar amount.
Can you just,
And
when you
I
get a
know
chance,
Tina
let
and
me know?
I know Tina and I were actually looking into that so that we could present some type of program on what it would cost us versus how much it costs us just for
Well,
a
that's why I
general
was asking
call.
that question.
You're always going to need an overall maintenance contract. One guy is not going to be able
No, I
to
get it.
do this entire place,
We
however.
started looking and, we're gonna start looking at the, and doing a cost analysis of what he's gonna need for both, now that the middle school is complete, and we have all of that involved with it, so we're starting that after this budget process is going.
Right.
So
We're just
this
gonna keep you
this
up.
HVAC person is not in this budget?
No,
that you're talking
he's not in
about?
this
Right.
budget.
I just wanted to be clear about that,
Yeah.
but there is a position.
There is a position in this budget, thank goodness, for our grounds custodial side. I think this position will be a great help to us, not only on the ground side, but also to help fill in for some of our custodial overtime during the day. We can't fill custodial time with a grounds person at night, but by contract, we can fill it with a grounds person during the day. So this will actually help us not only take better care of our fields, it will also help us to relieve some of our overtime when the custodians have vacation time
So,
during the day.
so when you, I just want to be explicit, when you talk about taking care of our fields, you're talking about our grass fields.
I'm talking about all fields,
Okay.
whether it's our grass fields or, we will still be doing minor maintenance work on the turf fields.
Okay.
We have the equipment, we've also been trained on it,
Okay.
so we'll be doing cleaning of it and ensuring that the day-to-day care of it is taken care
But this
of.
position was not hired, you're not looking at this position for the field maintenance, you're looking at, this is a position you've been asking for 5 years,
For the fields,
for the field.
correct. And this position will help us, will not solve all our problems, but it will be a great help to us. And again, it will help us on some of the daytime overtime. So we'll be able to fill in when possible during the day for a lot of the vacation time that's being taken.
So I just have another question just in here. Under account 430V,
Mhm.
we have HVAC and refrigeration maintenance, and then we have a repair charge.
Mhm.
You proposed under that 51.5, $51,500.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry.
On his,
430.
Oh, that's
oh, you guys don't have that one.
Pass that up, sorry guys.
All right, go ahead, say that again, I'm sorry.
Okay. In your account number 43Z,
Yep,
we have HVAC and refrigeration maintenance.
yep, that's the general contract.
Okay, yep, and then you have repair. So my question is this, as I'm thinking about things. Can you get a person in who can do grounds maintenance and HVAC
No,
repair?
can't mix the two,
How come?
contract.
Okay.
The grounds person can be grounds and custodial. Anything else is maintenance.
Okay,
So it's on the maintenance side.
okay. All right, thanks for clarifying that, just something I was thinking of.
When you say fields, you also mean playgrounds, right?
I beg your pardon?
When you say fields, you mean
Fields,
all grass areas at all
playgrounds,
schools?
At all
grounds. We-
schools.
yeah, include-
Property,
Exteriors.
Includes all our exterior
Mowing.
grounds. You know, mowing,
and I think we tend
weed
to
whacking.
lump, we use the word fields, but we're really talking
Yeah,
about school
I
grounds.
apologize, and
Yeah.
when we say grounds, we have over, right now, 200 acres of property that we maintain with 4 people, 4, which is unheard of. Just the amount of weed whacking, and for everybody who has a home and does weed whacking around their lawns and houses, we have miles of fencing that we have to weed whack both sides of. And there's just so much work. And the new middle school, with all their new designs and mulch beds and bushes and shrubs and everything they put around the school, will be a challenge. I've talked to Russ at the high school, and we're trying to put a program together for 11th, 12th graders that do community service to come in sometime in April to help us do all the cleanup work and all the beds and everything, which will also help us hourly. We'll have to, put somebody out there to supervise them, but it'll be good for the kids, and it'll help us, keep the place looking good. Because basically, we're gonna have to be gardeners.
Okay.
Do you know how much overtime we spent last year for the custodians?
The overtime that's in the budget that we have here is I would say 98% of custodial in maintenance.
What line is that?
So that would be on the first page, 112D, the overtime. So we spent-
$165,000
That's what we
98%.
budgeted. What we spent last year was
Okay.
223
in overtime.
in overtime. But there was also included with that overtime, the moving of the middle school stuff that was happening. So we had custodians going in to be there for when the contractors were there working on Saturdays and weekends and stuff like that. So
Saturdays
that-
and Sundays.
Saturdays, yeah, and Sundays.
And then I think we also, as we look at that and we say overtime, wow. We also
Yeah.
have to include in that these snowstorms where the custodians are out at 4:30 in the morning,
Right, right.
wherever possible,
Yeah,
cleaning
and
too.
during this whole construction phase, especially in the summer, we were starting at 6 in the morning and we weren't finishing until sometimes 4, 5, 6 o'clock at night, daily. So we were incurring more. I mean, I tried to change some of the scheduling to offset some of it, but the construction of the school really cost us a lot in overtime.
I also think it's important to keep in mind that that's why we've talked more and more with you about charging rental fees.
Yep.
Because that overtime many times is for organizations not school-related. They're using the building, and we have to have a custodian there.
Right.
So that's where the importance of that
Yep.
really comes in.
I mean, so basically, and we have in the budget this year a new person, and hopefully it stays in the budget for grounds, because we're going to desperately need it this year with the addition, and the addition of the turf fields, but there's also 2 fields in the back, a practice football field and a 8th grade softball field that is going to need maintenance also. So with all this additional work that we need, we've always needed an additional, and I always thought it was 2, I'll take 1, an additional grounds person to do a better job, because we're constantly getting complaints on how work is done. When it's not done, it doesn't get done on time. And, it's not just, like you say, the fields, but it's all the cutting of the grass. If you look at some of our schools, how vast they are. You go to Monterey School, it takes a lot of time to cut and weed whack. And we can't take proper care of the landscaping in the front of these schools. We just need to get the bulk of the work done. So we don't really do all the weeding and cutbacks and everything until the summertime comes, when everybody's gone. And of course, what happens, it gets overgrown during the month of June, and it starts looking a little ragged, but, we really don't have the time to get to that. If you miss a cycle of cutting, you're in big trouble, because now you have clumps and you're working 3 times as hard. So you have to stay on a cycle. The fields have to be on a certain cycle to make sure they stay cut so they're playable. There's the girls' field hockey. That field needs to be cut at 1.5 inches, which means we cut like every other day to keep playable. Now that we have the turf field, we'll be using that turf field, which will stay playable all the time, which will help us
Yeah.
a great deal. We're going to be able to rotate, close fields, repair fields that have been, abused for years, and really start to get fields back in some good condition.
So can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
And pardon me, I'm new.
No,
So-
that's all right.
You only get to say that for a certain.
Meeting of an expert.
You're not doing anymore.
So about the fields, as I understand it, and I'm not an expert on the fields, for some guidance here. As I understand it, the turf fields allow some of our other fields to rest,
Mhm.
which is necessary. Can you help me understand, is there maintenance happening on those fields while they're resting?
Well, that's what we'll be doing. While they're resting, we'll be drill seeding and prepping them so that we get better growth in them. What's been happening for years in these fields, the best time to repair fields would be September to November. That's the best grow time.
This is good information to have.
Problem is, there's always soccer, all kinds of use, Brian, on these fields, which we don't get a chance to do them. So by the time I get the fields turned over to me and people are done using them, it's first, second week in November. Not a great time to grow. We get a little growth out of it, and we do overseed at that time, and if we're lucky enough to get a couple of warm weeks, we might get some growth. But it's not the best time to do it.
And as some of our fields get more in more ship shape over the coming years,
Mhm.
as we rest and rotate,
Mhm.
do you anticipate less maintenance over the years, or would you say that?
They're gonna be getting less use than they do now, like the DeMayo baseball field doubles as a senior varsity baseball field, Legion baseball field, and varsity soccer field.
Where is that exactly? I think we should say exactly where that is. That's the one on,
That's in the complex.
Complex.
That's in the complex.
When you first come in, correct?
No,
Which one when you
it's all the way at
back?
the end in the back.
Back left.
Okay.
In the back.
All the way back.
Okay.
So that field, the outfield gets beat up every year, very badly. And I don't get soccer off that until November, first week, sometime around there. Every year, we go out and we drill seed it. We don't get full growth back, and if you know our coach of 58 years, he wants to be on that field March 13th, which is the day that it opens, and there's still ice on the field. So I don't get I don't get a chance in the spring to take care of it. Although we do the infield, take care of the infield because it doesn't get really touched. So it's very difficult to maintain fields in November.
But you're thinking that this will,
Oh, this will alleviate it because we'll take soccer off of the male field. There won't be any more soccer out there. There'll be a home run fence up that won't be taken down anymore. Once we get that outfield back into shape, we'll be able to maintain it and keep it in shape. Baseball won't put as much damage on that field as soccer does. Soccer, you have areas that are used specifically, like the goalie. You'll have a huge hole, worn spot, the center line, and I'm not a soccer person, so Brian might be able to help me with this.
It gets torn up.
It gets
torn up.
It gets torn up pretty bad.
And then you have moles too, but
And moles. We have to learn to live with it. The moles and the geese, they're there forever.
and you have all the necessary equipment for the new fields, correct?
Yes,
For the
yes,
synthetic turf fields.
we have the new equipment for the turf fields, yep, we've been trained on it. We actually just received what's called a sweeper, which takes the leaves off and any papers and stuff. We put that on the back of our tractor, we drive around and we pick all this stuff up with that. Yep.
Now, a resident came to the Board of Ed meeting in December and brought to our attention that there are only 3 types of vehicles that are Sprint Turf, the company that holds the warranty.
We have two.
Awesome, that's great news. That's awesome.
High school has one and we have one in our shop.
Okay, cool. And then also, is anywhere, and this is more for Tina, I think, is there anywhere in this budget that we're saving for the eventual replacement for the fields, or is that something that is not in here now?
It's not
Not in-
currently here now.
But we have been putting together a plan so that we will begin that as soon as the fields have started to be used in earnest. We'll have a revenue coming
The
in.
And
revenue stream.
is that, are we planning on getting the revenue stream by the rentals
Mhm.
of the fields?
Mhm.
And do we have the price breakout of what we're planning on renting?
We're meeting
working on
next
that.
week to look at that. We have samples from other districts
Mhm.
in what they're charging. So I have a very good idea of what I think we need to.
We'll probably bring it to the board at our meeting in
February.
The charges for the fields, the rental charges.
And we're targeting 800,000 over 10 years, or
Yeah,
Approximately.
approximately 800,000.
I have some material that I'd like to send you on that, because there are facilities in New Jersey and Maryland that have come in significantly above that, so I think if we're gonna plan, we should plan
You have to remember it's New Jersey also.
Jersey.
Hey, watch it.
The costs are a lot higher.
This is, the issue becomes, we were having a conversation about this week, is that the fee schedule is something that is beyond just a board matter, it's a community matter.
It is.
And so we've got to, once we have an idea of where we want to go, then we need to have some conversations with community leaders about needing to support that.
Yeah, I mean, these fields were a big investment, and we want to
Yeah.
make sure that we don't end up like there's a big class action lawsuit right now, 46 states, including DC, for fields that weren't properly maintained, so we want to make sure we're
Well,
taking care
and
of them.
that was one of our concerns when we started this whole project, was the company Sprint Turf that did the work, and we did research on their background, and also how do we properly maintain these fields to ensure that we keep the warranty intact. So that's why we've added the $10,000 in, so that Sprint Turf comes out 4 or 5 times a year, checks all the seams, checks all the edges, checks everything. If there's any repair work needs to be done, doesn't cost us anything. We have materials on site for them to do the work if they need to do it, but this includes any repair work that they might need to do to the field to ensure that we keep our warranty intact.
Thanks.
You got it.
Any more
Phil,
questions?
I have a quick question. You know the shed we used to rent?
What?
The shed, there was a shed we used to
The
rent
workshop.
for work, storage or something like that.
We used to rent?
Yeah, wasn't there a shed, like a storage shed or something?
You rent where
Was-
your workshop?
Yeah, Giles?
Yeah, did we move that? I think there was a plan with the middle school.
Well,
so-
there was a plan, but they cut that out of the budget.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, there was a $600,000 in the budget to put our workshop somewhere near Vandercourt Field.
Okay, so we still maintain that same.
Yeah, so we're still in our same location.
Okay.
We have 6,000 square feet on Giles Avenue.
Okay.
Where all our equipment and everything is kept, which is a couple blocks from the school.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, yeah, they didn't have quite enough money in there to do what they needed to do when they put it in, so there was no sense in even building it.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone have anything else?
I do have one more question.
Sure, no problem.
So for the new, I see the line item for the new custodial staff member. My assumption is that it includes other things as well. What does the salary look like when we aiming for, like, when we budget it?
I think
the contract, right?
it would be their contracted.
So it's standard.
Yeah.
Standard contract request, yeah. And what usually happens with that is, that will be bid on throughout our union. So someone from our union, whether it be a custodian, and usually a custodian, will bid into the ground side. We have part-timers that work at each school, 4 hours. They have the ability to bid into whoever moves out, and then we would end up replacing that part-timer with another 4-hour part-timer. That's usually how it works.
So it's sort of a trickle down.
Yeah, pretty much, yep. Unless no one wants to come outside and work. It is a grueling, it's a grueling job, not a lot of people like to do it.
Any other questions? Thank you, Phil.
Nice
See?
presentation, Phil.
Shorter than you, Dana.
Wow. Yeah, well,
Last year, 15 minutes though.
Brian, I didn't even get a question from you.
So we're good to move on to special ed, Dana?
yeah.
Okay. And
Good to go.
as I've thought about it, maybe it would be good to talk about where your greatest increases are at this point.
Yes, so you'll see the biggest increase probably in, it's in the healthcare line. If you go to, you should have a summary page. Yes, that's what it looks like.
This one right here. Does anyone have that?
You could pass
did
it
not.
down to Dot.
She did not.
We could-
Did these come to us in the email?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I think in the future,
Those are
we
the
don't print out.
You
You know, it's hard if we're traveling, I mean, or we're at work sometimes.
I know Dot needs a summary.
That's fine, maybe
I'll share with Brian.
You have more copies?
I actually do. Thanks. Two more.
Do you need one? You have it on your computer.
You all have them? You all set?
Does everyone have one?
Everyone have one now?
We need one more over.
I have one more for.
Okay.
For Dot.
Do you need one? Tom?
No, Wes. You can share. Sorry, Wes.
Okay, so if you go to the bottom of the page, you'll see 2130, 3300. You'll see an increase there, and that has to do with medically fragile students who is going to require some significant medical consultative services. And we had this person on board at a much, much, much lower rate in years past, but situation has changed, and so the student's gonna need some significant supports moving forward. So we had to increase that quite a lot.
Dana, what line are you looking at?
Well, the bottom one.
All the way at the
It's the
bottom.
professional technical one, all the way at the bottom of the first.
2130, 3300. 94,000.
The last one on the page, on the first
Okay,
page.
94,696,
Yes.
okay.
Oh,
Okay, if you turn to the next page. Tuition continues to grow, although it is slowing, so that's good news, but you will see, if you went across line by line, you'll see increases there. Again, it's relative to where we were and what the rates were in the past, so it's slowing down, but you will still see some increase in that line. That
Dana,
we're
my sense is,
mitigating.
just having gotten something from ACES recently, that annually each placement will increase their costs.
Yes, we typically count on a 3% increase anyway. A lot of times placements won't tell us until it's almost October or November, the school year has started. So we always budget basically a 3% increase off the top.
You know, what usually is the reason that they increase the cost? Is it just cost of doing business on their side, or?
Usually.
So
At
it
least
could
that's
go-
what they tell us.
It could go past 3% sometimes.
Absolutely. Mhm. And I
But
think,
they don't give you the details as to specific, this is why, they just tell you that this is what it is.
no, there's been a few times where ACES has sent out detail because the increase has been significant, and I think they knew their stakeholders were gonna have a problem with that.
Yeah.
So they were smart to give us a heads up on that. But other placements, you know, aren't as consistent in terms of detailing the increases. They'll just attribute it to standard operating costs.
And some of them we don't even get until even later, like in April or, you know, right before the new year starts. Like, we don't get all of them at that, you know, that time, especially with the contracts that are coming through.
Right.
We don't get those. So we just kind of anticipate a general
Mhm.
3%.
The good news is that we try to use the same consistent places because we have relationships with them, which is helpful to the students and to the families. But, you know, because of that, we can anticipate, you know, what kinds of increases we might see from them. Some will send out a letter in the spring, actually, I think priding themselves and telling us there will be no increases next year. So, you know, sometimes we get those nice surprises, and then other times we get surprises in, you know, after the school year started with the first bill, and that's not necessarily what I budgeted for. So,
Dana, could I just add that I believe that it's fair to say our goal has been to reduce that cost, the cost of the out-of-district tuitions.
yes.
And we've built programs in order to do that. Unfortunately, when there were students who had been placed out,
Yes.
who it's very difficult to bring back then,
For some, that's true.
for some.
That's right.
And so we're finishing up their process.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we are. And I have to say, you know, as I've said the last few years, that the buildings are doing a remarkable job
Yes, they are.
at helping us build those programs so that we can meet the needs of all students. And so the offset is decrease in tuition.
Mhm.
Just naturally, that's what's happening. The other jump you'll see, if you go down a little bit further into transportation, you know, it's not a whole lot, but it might just call your attention, and that's really just due to students who just require some specialized transportation services due to medical concerns that they can't load on, you know, a typical bus or even perhaps a smaller vehicle. More students, you know, you can't have a minibus with 15 students on it.
Are you talking about 510C?
Yes. And so some of that just requires us, from a safety standpoint, you know, to increase our transportation services.
Could I go back to tuitions for a minute? Because with new board members too, I think it's important to sort of lay out. There are also group homes, 2 group homes in North Haven,
Yes.
Dana?
Yes, one male, one female.
One male and one female, who, if the people residing in that group home does not have a town which they're affiliated with, then the responsibility for educational costs falls on our Board of Education. The other thing is that if Department of Children and Families, if they place children
Yes,
in facilities, sometimes even residential facilities,
correct.
that becomes the responsibility of the Board of Education. So this account is really always a moving target that we monitor weekly to
How
see.
I'm sorry.
You know,
How is somebody not affiliated with the town? How does that?
if
They
they're
can't find their parents.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah, or if their parents have relinquished
Right,
rights,
right.
And DCF does not reimburse.
They do not reimburse. No. Thanks, Dana. I'm sorry.
So those are really the big ticket items, which are not anything new. They're just, kind of the natural fallout of, some of the things that are happening. But you'll also see a lot of decreases, which I think, again, goes back to the buildings really rolling up their sleeves and doing a lot of work with, some difficult students, but also, our learning disabilities population increases, and so we're being more targeted in our instruction to reach those students. And I've naturally not had to support a lot of the things that I had to in the past because the buildings are doing them automatically now. And so that has helped decrease a lot of costs. Those startup costs are starting to go away because we're past the startup phase. Now we're just kind of in. And so that's been really helpful. So, overall, you'll see a decrease that I hope, does ring true once the new school year starts. That's what we're planning on. That's what, we've done some smart budgeting on, and that's what we expect to happen.
So then the final proposal for the student services account is $4 million, or 400, I'm trying to figure that out.
4.1.
4.1. And that's lower than what our actual was.
Okay. Yes.
I'm looking at 2016, 2017, I'm talking out loud to myself.
Yes, it is low.
It's 24,000 less than last year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So can I ask
Questions for Dana?
Yeah. For are the bus monitors included here?
No, the bus monitors are included with part of the excess cost money that we get from the state.
The ECS money? Okay.
Yes. Not the ECS money, that's education cost sharing. There's two different
There's
things.
two different.
It's excess cost funding that we get for our high-cost students.
And are they addressed, was their request addressed in this budget at all?
I have, I prepared a grant, how our grant funds are spent, and they are included in that part of it. The bus monitors.
Okay.
So I'll share that after Dana is done with her stuff.
More questions?
I do have a question. The percent or the number of students that are out of district, have they gone up, down?
The number?
Yeah. maybe.
Down.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah,
Good.
down. We're trending lower and lower every year,
Good, good. And how about our identification rate of?
going up.
LD?
That's a national phenomenon,
Is it
statewide
LD?
phenomenon. There's early research starting to come out as to why that's happening again, but nobody's really definitively said why. Our largest increase is learning disabilities.
Reading?
I can't say reading per se, because they don't break it out,
Okay.
but perhaps, or just generalized learning disabilities, and that's the state of Connecticut. So, we're kind of trending back into that world of learning disabilities being, a high rate.
Mhm. And how about social and emotional? Because there's so much anxiety.
Yeah,
Especially in the upper grades.
yeah.
School phobias.
Right, well, coincidentally, in North Haven, we've remained steady in that identification rate. I know it doesn't feel like it. When it comes to those students, I really think it's the 80-20 rule, with 80% of them taking, or 20% of them taking up 80% of your time. But The actual identification of them has not increased. There has been an increase in the OHI. So you could argue, is that a manifestation of something related to an emotional disturbance or a learning disability? So there might be something there. Statewide, ED is on a little bit of an increase. In North Haven, that's maintained steady. It's the learning disabilities.
And how about our preschool, special ed kids?
Preschool is expanding by the week. And we think we end the year with solid projections, including extra spaces, just in case. And we usually blow that out of the water before September even starts. And so we're we started planning back in November for next year. And we're coming up with some creative ideas. We've got some real flexible thinking going on. And we're gonna try to change a few things up and see if that could alleviate just the stress of the program's feeling.
Tina, can you say what OHA means?
I'm sorry, other health impaired,
And ED?
emotional disturbance.
Thank you.
Sorry.
When you say you're, like have some creative thinking going on to try and reduce some of the stress that the preschool is going on, can you elaborate on that at all? Or?
I could elaborate a little bit. I don't want to elaborate too much because we haven't set anything in stone. And as you know, sometimes when you hear one thing, that becomes, the plan, and that's not what I want to happen here.
Yeah, and that's why I'm not trying to box you in any corner.
That's okay. One example would be, for a long time, the preschool program, the approach was an age-based continuum. So 3-year-olds were 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds were 4-year-olds, and, if you were either one or the other. Well, what we've started to do is try to remove that premise and actually approach it from a continuum basis, where for most students, we can mix the ages up and actually address the need, regardless of being a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. So it's allowed the teacher to be more efficient if you have some higher functioning children as opposed to lower functioning children. Those activities are going to be different. So now the teachers can kind of target that instruction a little better, as opposed to saying all 4-year-olds will be together no matter how they're functioning.
That's a different way of looking at differentiation. I like it.
Exactly.
It is a more efficient way to look at differentiation.
But it's hard, to make the change to that program because, again, for years it's been age-based. And I think even in most private preschools, it's age-based. So you expect your 3-year-old to follow all the other 3-year-olds to 4-year-olds and such. So it's a little bit of a different approach. And the teachers are working with it to make adjustments accordingly because it also means changes in their teaching style. And it also means changes in the kindergartens when these children leave us. We're hoping to see a report from the kindergarten teachers in a year or two that tell us the incoming preschoolers are more prepared or are, better able to handle some of the kindergarten demands. So that's one example.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions for Dana? All right, thanks, Dana.
All right. Want someone to note that I beat Phil Day.
So, Tina, you want to talk about the grants?
I do. So I prepared, there has been questions that have been going on, let's split these up, on how, when we go to the Board of Finance, on what we do with our excess cost money and any of our grants that we're getting and how we're spending it. They think we're above and beyond of what we're getting. So I prepared the grants that are typical grants that we get and how we spend them and how we budget for them. So we get the IDEA and the IDE pre-K, and those are IDEA, the IDE pre-K, Title I and Title II are what they call entitlement grants. And basically the federal government tells us how much they're going to give us. It's not based on need, there's formulas that go on throughout the state. So we've been maintaining pretty much the same amount. Title I and Title II have gone down a little bit from previous years, but not enough it's significant, and IDEA has gone up a little bit. This fluctuates from year to year, so it's been pretty consistent, and there hasn't been any inclinations that these are going to be cut in any way. We're entitled to it. Some of it's based on our free and reduced lunches and so on and that. So like I said, most of that is formula-based. So we know we're going to get about, what I've included in my anticipated revenues. So Dana takes care of figuring out how to spend the IDEA and the pre-K money based on what her needs are. This is just kind of the breakdown that we've budgeted for 3 FTE or 3 full-time teachers and then 14 and a half aides, to help the programs that she has in place. So basically, that was a salary-based program. The IDEA, it's not a lot of money. It takes care of pretty much one para or one aide. So we don't go too crazy with that one because we don't think that one's going to, we're not going to get any more for it. The Title I money and the Title II money, Melinda budgets teachers appropriately. We need to have it according to the free and reduced. That takes a play into where we can place these teachers. They have to have certain qualifications for what they call highly qualified to do certain things. So Melinda tells me where she wants to put people, and I tell her how much she can have for her salary, and we just kind of accommodate for that. And then we do use a lot of the Title I money for professional development for
Teachers College.
Teachers College to, for the improvement. So that's where most of her professional development money is coming from.
And that's district-wide.
And that is used district-wide. Same thing with the Title II. There's some professional development money that we use in that. And then we have some money that's allotted for the instructional supplies. So they're very well thought out on how we're going to spend the money that the state and the federal government is going to tell us what we're going to collect from them. So we don't deviate too much from that part of it. The open choice, that's based on the number of students or open seats that we have students coming. This is what we're anticipating to collect for the open choice. So we basically pay 2 teacher salaries out of that. That hasn't, that has gone down a little bit due to the state cuts, the general state cutting. So we used to have, I believe it was 3 teachers. We had to cut that down to 2 teachers, but we had to absorb that 3rd teacher in our general fund.
Tina, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
How does what we receive for open choice per pupil, how is that in comparison to what we spend per pupil, let's say if they go to a VOAG or something like that?
I really haven't done that calculation, but I can pull that together.
I'm just curious if it's one-to-one or if it's
Yeah,
not one-to-one.
I don't think it's
so.
one-to-one. We, per student in open choice, we receive $3,000.
Oh, it's not one-to-one for sure.
Right. And then, the VOAG and other.
Those are closer to about 7,000 apiece. So yeah, we're basing it on the number of open seats that we're anticipating.
It just
And
seems like
the
they should make
3,000.
that even. Wouldn't
I know.
that would be more of an incentive for districts, I feel.
Right.
Yeah, so that's how we've budgeted for the open choice. The excess cost and the agency, and just to clarify the difference between the two, agency, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if an agency actually places a student out of district, we get a higher percentage back for that particular student than we would for the excess cost student. So it's 2 different grants, but it's kind of the same thing. There are high-cost students that we're getting reimbursed for.
So what is the excess cost again?
It's the way it's described here. When I look
Excess
at it, it
cost-
looks like we're getting money in, but I know that's not.
No, excess cost is our high-cost students, we get 4.5 times, it's a calculation, it's 4.5 times what they tell us a student cost would be. So, not to get too
So if you,
math.
let's just do it, so if you have a typical child is 25,000, then they go by 4, and then it's
Mhm.
100,000.
Mhm.
on that, and that money has to be used to educate that child.
Right.
Right.
And they reimburse a portion of that.
Right. We're not getting as much as we used to get from the excess cost, but this is kind of how we figured out how we're spending it. So, and this is how we anticipated what we're gonna be spending it. So what I do have, and I can share with you, if you look at the excess cost pieces, do you want to share that? When we pull the tuition amount together, based on the student needs and discussion with Dana, where her kids are, where the kids are going and what our costs are higher than that, because we take the excess, what we anticipate to get, the excess cost money back, we take that out of the total cost of the student. So, we're anticipating on getting, in here, 1.1 million. So what's that? So we take out 550,000 out of her tuition costs, because she's saying, if you go through the tuition costs in here, I've accounted for that on the second page. I've taken the $550,000 out for, for the anticipated use of the excess cost monies.
But the fact is, Tina,
It
that
does cost us.
our tuition costs are $3 million, and the state reimburses us $1 million.
And I think that's important.
It's more than 3 million. So if it's actually 3,553,000, because I've taken 550,000 out of that. So I do the same calculation with the transportation, and I didn't print the transportation, but this is to show you how we're accounting for these monies. And in here, we do have the bus monitors included with that. The bus monitors have been, since I started, and I believe they've been that way for a very long time, paid out of this excess cost grant money. That's just how it's been, and that's how it's been budgeted.
Tina, I'm sorry, Bob, this is a great report that you're giving us here. I would like one on the transportation.
Absolutely.
When you have a chance.
Yeah, I didn't get to
for you
print
right
it out,
now,
but, yep, I will get a
would like to see
transportation
that.
one.
This is really a nice report.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that I think oftentimes when we hear excess cost, we think of additional money coming in and supplementing, and it's really not.
It really
I mean, as you can see, there is still a large burden on the district.
Yeah, so if we took that 353 and you look at that excess cost of 1,100, we're still well over $2 million.
That's a really critical point to mention when we go to the Board of Finance.
Right. Well, I pulled together this little grants piece, and when we go to the Board of Finance, I'll have it, I pulled this together really at the last second, and I apologize. A little more detail. I apologize for that part of it, but I'll have it a little bit better explained for the Board of Finance too, when we go to them and say it's actually costing us $3.5 million for tuition. We are taking $500,000 out using the excess cost money, and we're doing the same thing on the transportation portion of it. We're actually spending whatever the special ed transportation is, less that portion of it out. So I will have that for the presentation for the Board of Finance, but I apologize for not pulling that
No, it's
together.
good.
No.
This was very good. I like how it is.
So, like I said, because I think there was always the misconception, from the Board of Finance last year and saying, well, you're getting this extra, we're not getting extra money. We are actually budgeting to use all of that money. And we're not being frivolous or whatever, spending our money. We're really paying attention to, how these costs are being. So the concern when we were going through all the state issues, and are we gonna get excess costs, are we not gonna get excess? When I did this current budget that we're in, it was based on the same formula, is that we anticipated on getting $1.1 million, so it's not in our general fund. So if we didn't get that excess cost money, we had to find that money within our current budget to pay for these costs that we were anticipating. So, and special education, as Dana said, it's a moving target, and we pay attention and, do the best that we possibly can to make sure we are where we are with items. So.
Very nice. I'm wondering, and I'm not an accountant by any means, and tell me if I'm talking out of school here. I'm wondering if when you bring this to the Board of Finance, We don't deduct this 550,000 here.
I can bring it to the bottom, and
that's what I was
this
gonna
is how
say.
I was trying to pull my numbers together,
Sure.
so it would flow in my worksheets, but absolutely, I'll bring it
put
so
your
that we can
total
say,
3
total
million.
less what we're anticipating for
Right,
excess cost.
550 and excess, say 1,100, and our net value, because that's what they need to see.
Out of pocket, or out of pocket.
I understand, yes, I understand what you're saying. I think I kind of presented it that way last year. Like I said, I didn't clean up this worksheet
Yep.
for presentation
No, that's
purposes.
fine, it's perfect for us, it was
Yeah.
good, it's just we're having conversation and just have them understand, because I think, Bobby, you're absolutely right, when people hear excess cost, they think it's extra money coming to us.
Now, and the governor, in his proposed budgets, and is always looking at ECS and excess costs. And, you know, we monitor that very closely because we rely on the money. And they're always looking for ways in which they can reduce. So, thanks, Tina.
Yeah, thanks, Tina, this is really good.
Any questions for Tina?
I don't know if you have covered this already, but I had a quick question regarding, it's 8100. It's regarding high school, middle school dues and fees.
Oh.
It's the last page. Are we supposed to get there, or I can ask a question about that?
No, I can answer the increase of the 25,000 and the dues
Yeah,
and
the
fees.
72, yeah.
It's, they're going through accreditation next year.
Okay.
So we have to, it's an expensive process.
Okay,
So we had
okay.
to increase and include that, and
Okay,
then that's
okay.
where we put it.
Okay, because I looked at 16, 17, it was down.
How many,
Uh,
how many years do we go through that?
Every 10 years.
Every 10 years.
But you probably know this, Goldie, but the interesting thing about that is that there's a team that comes to town and spends the better part of a week, and we have to put them up in a hotel, and we have to.
You have a choice of hotels.
And
restaurants.
But we want a good review, Goldie. So there's a lot of writing out
We want to make their job as easy as possible, but we do take the.
I didn't realize we had to pay for that.
Oh, yes, the whole, it's an expensive endeavor to get the accreditation. And it's usually a team of 5?
No, they're in the teens.
Oh, they are.
It's a free trip, so.
He has to pay for the hotel.
All their food.
All their food, right, and you even have to reimburse them for the gas. To get there, they give you a receipt. It's really, it's a significant expense for the event.
Well, let's negotiate with Best Western or whatever that hotel is. We want breakfast included with their rate.
Sandra was in charge of it, so we did.
Good for you.
They don't have sheets on their bed, but.
Oh, who needs it? It's in the fall, right, early
It's a
fall?
throw blanket in.
Yeah, it's still warm. Other questions for Tina? So that wraps it up. And everything you've heard over the past 3 weeks right now brings us to a budget increase of 4.02% when you factor in the hockey. And it was at 3.
What's the number, the actual dollar?
Oh.
At the 4.02.
The total proposed is 53,727,032.
727.
432, yeah. And that is approximately a $2 million increase from last year.
Okay.
Mike, Dr. Cronin, you probably said this before, and I don't remember. If you were just counting increases in staff, what percentage of, would that be?
Of this, of the
Yeah.
salary?
Yeah.
If we were doing our contractual obligations, if you looked at, that is close to, we're approaching 80% of the budget, Tina, fair?
Just the salary and the benefits portion of it
Yeah.
is what you're asking?
Yeah, well, I mean, so it would be like a 2.5 increase, if everything else stayed the same, you were just doing.
I think that's pretty much what you're looking at, minus a little bit. I think that most of that is contractual obligations.
That's important for them too.
Yeah.
Steve, will you present to the?
Yeah, so with your blessing, this is what we will go forward with to the Board of Finance.
Judge Table for this?
Yes.
May I have a motion to accept the budget as we have in front of us to be presented to the Board of Finance on Saturday, February 3rd?
Moved. So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, motion passes.
Okay.
Good luck.
So-
Thank you.
Recap for everybody, we're presenting first on that Saturday?
No,
So what's our time?
Our time is 8:45.
Okay.
8:30 is
The IT.
the IT department in town, and that's always very brief.
What's the date again?
February 3rd, Saturday, February 3rd. And it's in the First Selectmen's meeting room.
Where it usually is.
Yeah, where it usually is. Yeah. So, and that usually goes for a couple of hours.
Yeah. Yeah, our section usually lasts about an hour or so.
Mm.
The detail that you've done, Tina, should be pretty clear to them.
I'll clean up the tuition. I will have a transportation one to accommodate it. With
If you
the,
want to, I wanted to just see for myself.
I want to present that to the Board of Finance,
Mhm.
so that they can understand where
That one goes.
we're coming from.
Okay, good.
I think it would be beneficial to our fund at this point.
What happens if the Board of Finance takes issue with the 4% increase?
You mean
when they take
When they,
Did we all say
when
that?
they take issue, I don't want to be pessimistic.
Okay.
If they come back with a lower percentage increase, then we all come together and look at how are we going to
Where do we reduce our
meet this,
budget?
where will we reduce? And we'll come to you with some suggestions, though they're just that, they're suggestions. The board may have feelings about other things that, sometimes when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to see through the weeds. And so it's a very good conversation that we have about what needs to, unfortunately, they're very difficult decisions. Because, I think you've seen here, we are extremely lean to begin with. So, and you're hearing about districts doing all kinds of, yes, I mean.
That was
Today's paper?
Yes, and I really want to, we monitor it so closely, I want to avoid all of that, yeah, they're difficult decisions, Amanda, but we get there. Okay? Thank you all.
Thank you.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.